We are joined now on the line by Benoit Fosson, the security correspondent at the Wall Street Journal. Hello to you, Benoit. Welcome back.
Hi, thank you so much for
Hi.
having me.
Love to hear your up-to-date thoughts, Benoit. It does seem to be an encouraging sign that those big American players, Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, have joined the talks.
As you pointed, basically, Special Envoy Witkoff generally travels when there's a good chance of a deal. And he's jetted, in his private jet today in Sharm el-Sheikh, meaning basically there is a chance of an agreement. Well, you mentioned, though, the possibility of a Nobel Peace Prize. Remember, it's Friday, so the window to get the deal before that deadline is pretty small.
Yes, yes. And look, I mean, what about you're picking up in your conversations about the Hamas demand for the demand that they should totally disarm, and the IDF being called upon by Hamas to fully withdraw from Gaza? Do they look to you soluble from what you're hearing?
Well, like you say, it's a little bit of a Mexican standoff in the sense that, both sides wants the other one to compromise on the most fundamental element of their security and their future. And it's true, a complication here is the fact that you have a ceasefire negotiation that doubles with a long-term peace negotiation. And obviously that makes the deadline, especially the Friday deadline for Nobel Peace Prize, much harder to reach.
Right, and the point that was made a moment ago from one of Palestine's ambassadors was that there's no great clarity about the business, the timing of all of this, the withdrawal from the Gaza territory. Again, that looks like a problem. You wonder, can that be overcome through negotiations, maybe with the help of these two big hitter Americans?
I mean, the first stage, though, is really the 72 hours window that would follow an agreement on a ceasefire to release the hostages. And of course, agree, and that's the other side of the negotiation, on which Palestinians, prisoners would be released. That would be really the first test, of that we are on track for a ceasefire and potentially a peace agreement. And that we haven't even reached at this stage.
No. And what about the release of Palestinians who've been detained and are now locked up on charges of terrorism, including some who were part of the October the 7th outrage?
I mean, I think the name that always comes back is really Marwan Barghouti, who was jailed, in the previous arrest on allegation of terrorism charges, and is considered potentially a unifying figure between all the factions, whether Fatah, the party of Mahmoud Abbas, or Hamas, because he's got this kind of credibility as a militant, but also as a more secular background. So he's really the name that keeps on popping up, and he's going to be the most difficult name to obtain to
Yes.
be released.
Yes, and I'm mentioning earlier on the fact that it is a fact that Donald Trump, President Trump, has largely driven the progress to get to this point. He wants his place in history as a peacemaker, and it's also relevant, isn't it, Benoit, that he wants that Nobel Peace Prize, I mean, partly because President Obama had one.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really the word that keeps on coming in every negotiation, whether that's Gaza, whether that's Ukraine, I would say, especially these two ones. When Vitkov speaks privately, he basically mentioned Nobel Peace Prize as kind of a prime target. So definitely that's the end game. But the issue is that end game is like days away,
Yeah,
if it's not
Friday.
reached by then. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much time if he wants to qualify for that, and even then, would he qualify for that? Another issue I'm keen to get your thoughts on. It is hardly controversial now, Benoit, to say that President Trump is driven by his political and personal self-interest. Now, the Trump Business Organization has got enormous assets, hotels, golf course and the like in the Gulf states. Haven't heard much about any Trump plans for development in Gaza, though he did put out that video depicting Gaza as a potential luxury holiday resort. He'd chair the Board of Peace, overseeing reconstruction, Board of Peace as it's called. You'd imagine that he would have his organization, his family business, would want a stake in that.
I mean, I haven't heard that actually. I've heard more that it was an insistence from the mediators, especially Qatar, to having chair that committee because therefore that means going to be really involved. It's going to be personal, almost like, he's going to have his name on that committee and therefore on that effort. And he's going to be a guarantor, on both sides. I mean, that's really more the message I got about the reason why he's sharing this committee is like, in a way, that's you're responsible now. And also you're a trusted party and it's going to be a personal matter. It's not going to be, something delegated to, to your subordinates or to another country. You're in charge. So that was more the perspective I heard about why he got that extra job, on top of the White House.
Yeah. Manuel Hassassian at the Wall Street Journal. Thank you for coming on. You of course, speak for the Palestinian Authority and not for Hamas. But Hamas have issued this statement saying they're seeking to overcome all the obstacles to achieving an agreement. Do you believe that one of the clear obstacles, Hamas giving up its weapons, do you believe that is going to happen?
Well, first of all, let me comment on the plan in general. This plan, has been couched with constructive ambiguity. There are no details in this plan, no timeline, no mention of withdrawal when. So it is an open-ended plan where Israel could use it the way it wants to in the process of trying more or less to have a certain kind of a ceasefire with Hamas and in Gaza. Now, there are a lot of sticky issues here. President Trump, in his plan, he never mentioned anything about the right of self-determination. Neither he talked about the future Palestinian state. Neither he mentioned the West Bank and what the settlers have been doing, and no finality to this conflict. We are afraid that this plan might be another Oslo agreement when there is no timeline, no commitment, and what have you, where each party could, in one way or another, try to breach it. And that's why I don't think the seriousness of this plan lacks in the instruments of how to implement, those agreements and those specific issues that are so sticky. The question of giving arms, why Hamas, a safe passage for Hamas leaders to leave Gaza, the reciprocity of the hostages with political prisoners, the timing of handing the hostages, all these are sticky issues. That's why so far we don't have the final answer to these negotiations, because everybody is trying to predict what is going to happen. But the non-clearance of this plan in itself led to this chaotic kind of negotiations where it's becoming more and more complicated, because the basic elements of this plan should be the withdrawal of the Israelis, going back to negotiations, and let's go and have an independent Palestinian state through negotiations and with the recognition of the international community.
Right. So you want more, or rather, you and as you were looking through the mind of Hamas, you want to see more clarity about the withdrawal, the complete withdrawal is what they're demanding of Israeli forces from Gaza. I mean, the arrival of Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, President Trump's emissary, at the negotiating table, at the talks, that does, I suppose, make the possibility of a successful outcome more likely, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, actually, yes, to a certain degree. These are brokers, and they are experienced brokers for peace and conflict. I wouldn't underestimate, their contribution. But you see, the problem is with the Israeli side. Does they abide by what Kushner and Steve Witkoff would say? For example, when we talk about, withdrawal, Israel wants to withdraw only 40%, and then another 20%. And then where is the timeline of this withdrawal? So as we know that Gaza will be safe and reconstruction will take place and people will have food, aid and what have you, and then life goes on with the reconstruction of Gaza at all levels. We cannot see that when it is based on incremental withdrawal, where, there will be always excuse for Israel to keep on, killing people, and the genocide will be maybe limited in terms of targeting Hamas under that pretext. And the war will continue in a different manner while we are talking about peace, withdrawal, cessation of fire, the building of Gaza, and the administration of Gaza by an international community headed by a person like Tony Blair, who is persona non grata. for the Palestinian Authority, for Hamas, for the Arabs in general also. So why do we have to deal with issues based, on concrete things that we believe in, by complicating things, bringing people that had a history with us, even in the quartet? I said that.
But tell me, Ambassador, is the involvement of Tony Blair in this board of pieces, it's being called, to oversee transition and reconstruction, is Blair's involvement a deal breaker, do you think?
Is what?
A deal breaker. Could the deal or the possibility of a deal founder on that issue? No.
No, I don't think he's a deal breaker, because we have witnessed, his role during the quartet, and you have seen him constantly being under Israeli pressure, where he unequivocally supported all the arguments of the Israeli. And this is out of personal experience, we say that.
Yeah, but you think his presence his presence will not derail the deal. Now, what about the demand for the release of Palestinians who are being held in custody by Israel, some of whom are being held over multiple Israeli deaths? And I'm also talking about Marwan Barghouti, who's a leading Palestinian figure. Do you think they could be deal breakers? Do you think Israel might dig in on that and that could wreck the deal?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't think Israel is concerned about the releasing of Ahmad Saadat and Marwan Barghouti, because these are considered to be national heroes and Mandelas. And these people are the ones who maybe could, in the future, make a certain breakthrough when it comes to the peace process. But as far as Israel is concerned, these are terrorists. They consider them as terrorists, and that's why they are in jail. And they are not going to compromise. Hamas put their names on the list. And Netanyahu, so far, with his government, are refusing to let them free. Why? For a lot of reasons. They want to show that they flex the muscles, they will choose the prisoners, and most of the detainees are going to be released are administrative detainees. Believe me.
Yeah. In your heart, Ambassador, do you believe there will be an agreement, a deal?
You mean now? Yeah, there will be a deal, but not to the satisfaction of the Palestinian people in general. It's a deal by de facto. Forced on us, because we are the weaker part of the equation.
So we will watch. We will watch to see. I'll have to leave it there, Professor, because time presses. But it's been good to have you on the program and getting your thoughts. Thank you.